How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today is a very important video. Probably one of the most important videos that we could have on the channel about cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is spiking in price in certain parts of the world, and for good reason, because governments are changing the rules of the game. They're limiting people's access to their own assets, which is what I want to talk about here today. If you don't mind hitting the subscribe button, share this video, or just hit the like button. I appreciate that. There are links underneath the video as well in case you want to start buying cryptocurrency, or you want to trade cryptocurrency, or you want to start buying stocks. All of the links are underneath the video, along with the link to my Patreon that tells you exactly what I'm buying and selling. Now, as we can see, the overall crypto market is a little bit red here today. Bitcoin is sitting at $23,200 US. So you might be thinking, what the heck is he talking about? Where is Bitcoin $38,000? I can't see anything that says that. However, there are certain parts of the world, like Nigeria, that are seeing a 60% premium in Bitcoin. They're seeing price go up to $38,000, $39,000. And it's not because of their own currency devaluing. I mean, that's always part of it. But it's because there's such a need for Bitcoin right now. And right now, they are leading the world in the term buy Bitcoin. And they're number 2 overall in the world on just the search term Bitcoin over the last 30 days. Now, why is this happening? And you might be thinking, this is not relevant to me. I live in the US. Nothing's going to happen to my dollars. But that's not the case. We're going to show why this is so important. So why is this happening? Well, people are going to Bitcoin because of efforts of the central bank to push citizens into digitalized cash. There's a 60% premium over the current market price of Bitcoin, around $23,700 at the time of this writing, now $23,200. It comes as the Central Bank of Nigeria has continued to impose limits on ATM cash withdrawals amid an ongoing effort to accelerate a shift to a cashless society. So they have limited cash withdrawals to $44 per day earlier this month, and they gave them a deadline to switch all their dollars to their new dollar. You can see as of January 9, citizens are allowed to withdraw a maximum of 20,000 nairas, or about $43.50, from cash machines per day, with a weekly limit of 100,000, or $217. The move came just days before new Naira banknotes went into circulation with the aim of curbing inflation and money laundering. The central bank imposed a deadline of January 24 for Nigerians to exchange their old, higher denomination banknotes for the currency. So basically, they gave them 2 weeks and a maximum of $434 to switch over their currency. There were long queues and complaints that there was insufficient time to meet the deadline. The central bank now extended it to February 10, according to the BBC. It is not the first time that Bitcoin premium has surged in Nigeria. In February 2021, the central bank banned regulated financial institutions from providing services to cryptocurrency exchanges in the country, driving the Bitcoin premium as high as 36%. This has obviously affected a lot of citizens there. They're not being able to access their own currency. This is where I think a lot of people have different views on Bitcoin, depending on where you're at in the world, depending on maybe your socioeconomic status. You might be in a more developed nation that you're not really worried about the dollar as much as, if you were living in some other developing area that has huge inflation, maybe corrupt governments, that kind of thing. A lot of people feel pretty strongly that the US dollar is the best currency in the world, and there are other ones too that do pretty well, but in other parts of the world, Bitcoin is not bought necessarily just as an investment. It's used as a hedge because, first of all, it holds up pretty well compared to most currencies, and even against the US dollar, it does really well over time. But even short term, if you lose 30% on a Bitcoin move and your currency devalues by 60%, you'd rather hold Bitcoin. Also, your government can seize money away from you. They can take your money. So a lot of people think of Bitcoin as an investment, but it's also insurance against some catastrophe or against some kind of government that is overreaching. And you might be thinking that this is kind of just in Nigeria. It's just a weird case where this is happening. But if you remember, Ukraine was kind of similar. They limited cash withdrawals. A lot of people only had the crypto that they had in their hardware wallets. And remember, it's very portable as well. Bitcoin and crypto is really the only asset that you have full control over. Think about it that way, right? You can't pick up and bring your house somewhere. If you don't pay your property taxes here in the US, you get your house taken away. If you don't pay to have your car renewed, you can't drive it, here in the US at least. Your cash can be taken away from you. Any kind of physical goods can be taken away from you, but crypto, it can live in your mind. It can live out in the ethos, right? You can have access to it no matter where you are in the world if you can just remember the words that get you into your wallet. Now, this has happened in other areas too. It's not just Ukraine and Nigeria. If you remember, there have been use cases for crypto very recently in our neighbor, Canada. And I'm not trying to get political here, but if you remember a year or two ago, there was a truckers movement. Some people thought it was not right. Some people thought it was okay. But they were fighting for something to do with COVID, which we won't get into too much. But they were like blocking roads. They were protesting. Now, it wasn't a violent protest, but it also wasn't them just sitting at home going on strike. They blocked roads, as I understand. Now, to try to curb this, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau decided to invoke the country's Emergencies Act. This is the first time that they ever had to use this, and it gave police sweeping new powers to go after the finances of the protesters. They weren't even required to know exactly who the protesters were, but if they suspected someone was connected to a protester, they could freeze their accounts. And this is without any kind of court. So the government can freeze the accounts of people they think are connected to a group that they do not agree with, and they're causing troubles. So this is happening close to home. And even if you think it's not happening in the US, remember, just a few days ago, they said that the government and President Biden's administration was looking into research and development of cryptocurrencies. They were looking to research and develop. A lot of CBDCs are being thrown out around the world. And we already have some restrictions here in the US, withdrawal limits from different banks. And a lot of people might say this is just because they only have so much cash on hand, which I worked at a bank. That is the case for the most part. But it's not just the banks that have limits. The US says that you have to file a CTR if you have transactions over $10,000. You can't continuously bring in $10,001 without being questioned about where this money is coming from and making sure that it's not being laundered. Recently, PayPal told users that they will fine them $2,500 for misinformation. They backtracked because they got so much pushback. And it's not just with the banks. I mean, when you think about what's happening this week, we have the Federal Reserve talking about raising interest rates. The Federal Reserve are nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. A full term is 14 years. This is not the citizens deciding who sits on the board of governors at the Federal Reserve. There's really no oversight for the Federal Reserve either. They make the call. So when we have interest payments ballooning over $1 trillion a year, and we have tax revenue of $4 or $5 trillion a year, so 20% of our taxes are going just to pay off the debt because they had to raise rates so high because they had to curb inflation because they pushed out way too much money. So they're basically covering their own mistakes and making us pay for it, and they have no real oversight. So this is happening right now where we have governments that have a lot of control over our dollars, over our money, over our assets. We don't have a great say in what happens. We have limits on how much we can do in cash, and we have some restrictions coming for crypto specifically in the US and regulation. I understand why people want Bitcoin specifically as a hedge, not just against inflation, not just as an investment, but also a hedge against governments. And there are so many more cases where we could go through governments seizing assets. Read the book Bitcoin Billionaires sometimes. They give an example of a country in Europe in the last 20 years that froze accounts and took the money of their citizens to repay their own debts. This is likely to happen in the future too. And right now, some citizens are willing to pay 60% more than Bitcoin's worth in other parts of the world just to get their hands on it and get out of their own currency. Let me know your thoughts on this underneath the video. Bitcoin is a great insurance product in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts though, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.